Gavel. Can you see if you can find my gavel, Alan? Bring it over, please. Yeah, betcha. I gotta have someone to throw it, yeah. Council, I have my gavel back. Someone took it away from me. I'm not sure if that's symbolic or anything, but well, I have it in my hands now. Thank you very much for your attendance at this meeting of October 11th. Thank you, people in the gallery and those watching us online. Today's meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person at the municipal office at 153 McKellar Street. This meeting will be streamed live and recorded and published on the Southwest Middlesex YouTube channel. Before we begin, we'll give a land acknowledgement. This gathering by acknowledging that the land upon which we meet is the traditional territory of First Nations people who have a long-standing relationship with the land, water, and regions of Southwest Middlesex. Council, I have not been advised of any disclosure of pecuniary interest. Does any develop? None. We'll move on. Additions to the agenda? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion that the agenda as presented be moved. Thank you, Councillor Choi. A second for that. Councillor Vink. All in favor? Carried. We have delegations and presentations at present. We'd like to call upon the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority. Mark Peacock and Val is in the background there. Mark, how are you? Yeah. Yep. Alan will make sure you're comfortable and make yourself at home there.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to recognize Councillor Vink, who is the member on our board. He's one of the directors of the Conservation Authority. So today I want to talk about the inventory of programs and services and a number of changes that have come to conservation authorities as a result of bills that you as councillors have been very much affected by, because those same bills affect the workings of a municipality. So that's Bill 139 and Bill 23. And they changed the way that conservation authorities can levy a municipality. And I want to go through a very short slideshow to give you the background, because we're going to ask that we sign a memorandum of understanding regarding some of the funding for the Conservation Authority. And I think it's really important that council understand where that's coming from. Next slide, please. So the conservation authorities were required to create a report to the minister that outlined what we do. So we completed that at the end of February of 2022, and we sent that to you. What it did is it broke down everything we did, every single account that we charged to, and it said how it's funded and what that work is and what it accomplishes. That inventory, it's called the Inventory of Programs and Services, is living. Now we do a lot of work with grants. So probably a third of the money that comes into the Conservation Authority, or actually over half of the money, sorry, that comes into our Conservation Authority is from grants, donations, and fees. And every year changes because we get different grants. So this inventory that we sent you, we tried to use the very worst situation we could around grants so that it was a conservative estimate of how that works. Next slide, please. What it does is it breaks down all our services into three categories. Category one is what they call mandatories. The province has defined what we do in three categories. The first being what all conservation authorities must do. That's our flooding, erosion, holding lands, source water protection. Those are the main things that the province has required us to do. Those things are often our most unpopular programs. If you think about a program where you have to get a permit from the Conservation Authority to build a house along a river, it's not necessarily the most popular thing. It's very important that we protect people, but the mandatory programs tend to be those regulation type things. Category 2 is what we used to call special levies. That's when we take on a project for a municipality. Let's say you want a floodplain done in through a community. We'll take that on. It'll be done through shared funding, but we would levy a portion of it back to the municipality that's doing the actual floodplain map. And the third is the other programs and services, and they tend to be our popular ones. Those are our stewardship programs, our education programs, our camping in our conservation areas, our species at risk, all the types of things that we do with people on farms. Our conservation authority works with over 250 people in the rural areas every year doing projects. That's category 3. That's where we do all that work, but it's also where we generate almost all our revenue, because that's where we get grants and other programs. Next slide, please. So what we've had to do is change our budget, and all conservation authorities had to do this. So we had to recategorize categorize our budget based on these 3 categories. So and one of the challenges is to try to give you the inventory that made sense, because our budgets, like yours, changed a lot during COVID. So we looked over many, many years in trying to do this to give you an understanding of how our budgets were broken down. And other conservation authorities did, like St. Clair did the same thing, trying to give you an understanding of what you can expect from a conservation authority in the work we do and what those percentages were and how we raise money. Next slide. Now, this is really small. One back. I think, yeah, there we are. Oh, something's going wrong. One more up forward then. There. So what we did, you can see here, every single one of our accounts in our chart of accounts is accounted for. It explains the program. It says what category it is in and how it's funded. So we went through, and that's what we provided to you in February of 2022. So you can see how our programs were funded and what we did. Next slide, please. What we did not do is use surpluses within categories to fund on other categories. So it meant that if we made money on a campground, we weren't going to ship that out of the campground. We were using that money to improve that campground. And it's generally because where we spend money and where we make money have to be the same things, or we won't continue making money in those categories. So that is one of the decisions we made. And so where possible, those funds were used to make sure that those programs remain viable. Next slide. In that table, you'll see that the funding is broken down to about 4 different places we get money. There's municipal levy. There is self-generated levy, which is the majority of our funding, which is fees, grants, and donations. Special levy, and we have 2 with Chatham-Kent, so we do not have a category 2 levy with this municipality. And those 2 categories are for things like tree planting. Maybe you've heard a little bit about tree planting in Chatham-Kent recently, and the flood control works that we protect the city of Chatham. And then we also have provincial funding. It's not very much money out of our almost $5 million budget. Our Section 39 levy has now been reduced to a little less than $80,000 a year. So we do not get the support. We at one time used to get 50% of our funding from the province. It's now a very, very small percentage. Next slide. So our budget now has changed. This is a 5-year budget. And you will now see our budget not only in a summary table like this, but also the category 1, 2, and 3, because we now have to report this to the province, how all those categories work. The multi-year budget, we are looking at a 5% increase next year, and it has to do with the compensation review that the board has requested for staff. We lost significant number of staff over the last year, and it has to do with where we sit in competitive process with other staffing. So there'll be what we are doing though at the same time as municipalities also did, you had to implement an asset management plan. That is now going forward at the Conservation Authority. We are drawing down our reserves over 10 years and increasing starting in 2024, 1% per year of levy to over 10 years get enough money for the asset management plan. But in that time, we'll draw down about $1 million of our reserve. Most of our reserves will be drawn down to fund that asset management plan. And in that way, we don't have to do a huge increase to municipalities. And so in what you're seeing in the 5 year is 5% next year, 4% year plus 1 on the asset management plan. And then we go back to our standard 2% per year, which is our board recommended increase that we've done for many years. And then there's 1% above that. So you'll see 5, 5, 3, 3, 3. But it's actually 1% less because of the asset management plan. So that's the 5-year budget. But next slide, you'll see that there's a category 1 budget. Next slide, category 2 budget, which you don't have anything. And next slide, category 3 budget. And you'll notice that category 3 is pretty significant, the dollar value. It's around $2 million of that type of work that we do. Next slide. So what's in it? So with the inventory, then we have to develop an MOU or some sort of agreement between the Conservation Authority and the municipality to be able to charge you category 3 because it's quote non-mandatory by the province. So what we did was we worked, your neighbor, Middlesex Center has 5 conservation authorities, which chaos happens when you have 5 different partners and 5 different agreements. So what we did is we picked an agreement that Middlesex Center used, and we're using it across the watershed so that we can be consistent both with Essex, with St. Clair, with all our partners, the Sauble Bayfield, all the partners that municipalities in Middlesex share. So that's the agreement we finally came up with, and we've worked with staff, reviewed it with staff, and we now believe we have an agreement that fits the requirements of the regulation. Next slide. So as before, there's no category 2, and I don't believe there is for Ken as well, but there is category 3. And this is the conservation education, elements of water quality monitoring around phosphorus and the farm community, species at risk, stewardship, and the active use of our campgrounds. Next slide. So the agreement went to our board in October. Then we had Bill 23, which changed everything again, and then you had Bill 193 and all those types of things at that point. So those agreements had to change as the bills came down from the province. So we now have an agreement that was done as of April, and it now is in good shape with regards to the legality of the regulations that are in place. Next slide. So here's your numbers. In 2024, your levy is $47,577 to the Conservation Authority. Out of that, $45,000 and a little bit is category 1, and $4,000, about 8% is that category 3. So the agreement that we're talking about is for us to levy you the $4,000, that's $4,008. The other $45,000 is through mandatory programs, which is just part of the ordinary levy. So we have a 3% increase, and it's because your CVA did not go up as fast as places like Leamington and some of our other municipalities. So even though we had a 5% increase, you will only see 3.05% increase in 25. And that's because of that. And you are about 2.9% of the total levy. So that is sort of the background to all this legislation. This is a summary of a lot of words in legalese. I'm hoping it made sense, and I took you through that story of changes. So we now, next slide, we request that the municipality approve the agreement for the category 3 funding, which would be that $4,000 next year.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Council, are there any questions you'd like to ask through the chair? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Vink, please, first.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Mark, I have a few questions. I looked at the display here. Is there still erosion on the lakes? I know it was mentioned in the email report we got. Are you still having to combat that?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Yes, we are. And there are significant issues, particularly around Rondo Bay and Erie Shore Drive, and then all the way down Talbot Trail, significant. And we're working, a lot of that is impacting Chatham Kent. And we're working with communities, with landowner groups and everything else to address that. Sometimes, however, some of those solutions there's no real good answer.
Yes, follow up. Go
Okay.
ahead, Councilor Vic.
Yeah, two follow-ups, if you don't
Yep,
mind.
no, not at all.
Now, the Source Water Protection Act, Mark, how does that work in the rural areas? Do you do some monitoring towards that?
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor?
go ahead.
We do not do monitoring to enforce. We do monitoring so that we can work with programs to improve water quality over time. Most of our targets in this watershed is around phosphorus, and it's around phosphorus reduction. That 40% you've probably heard of from the Lake Erie Action Plan. We are the main implementers of work with the community, with farmers, even with rural people to try to reduce that phosphorus. So the water quality around source water protection isn't the same issue. Most of the water supplies are pretty secure here. We do work with landowners around those water supplies so we don't get spills and stuff. But most of the water quality we work is in the broader watershed level to work with reducing phosphorus.
And then one last question, Mayor Allen. So we're in a rural area for the most part. And so if a farmer wants to take an acre or two out, you have a program for that, do you not, Mark? And who would they get a hold of?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, we do. We work closely with a number of partners. If it's a wetland, it'd be Ducks Unlimited. We would work with Alice. I don't know if you've heard of the Alice Canada program. There's an Alice Middlesex group that we sponsor. We actually, Lower Thames sponsors 3 Alice programs where when people take land out of use, we will pay rent for that land. It's not a lot of money, but it recognizes the farmers' work on retiring that land for creating an environmental impact. So you would get hold of our office and we will connect you. The other thing is when we do stewardship, we don't ever spend a whole dollar of our own. We find enough partners that we're spending maybe 25 cents on the dollar. And that makes it that we can do way more over time. So we not only contact people with us, we will contact that person with who we think can provide the best resources for that project to occur.
Thank you. Councillor Vink, any further questions? Seeing none, we want to thank you very much, Mark, for the information. We have another presentation from St. Clair, and council will deal with the adoption of the resolution following this presentation, the next presentation. Ken, how are you?
I'm well, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today, members of council. I as well would like to acknowledge Councillor Allen, who's our board member. You actually share a board member with Newberry. So your council member will sit on our board for 3 years. Newberry will send a representative for the 4th year of the term. So that's sort of how that works. Mark very much covered most of the detail of what I'm here for today. You could just skip to the next slide, please. So he's already gone over this, so I'm not going to dwell on this at all to make my presentation even that much shorter. So we can go to the next slide, please. So what we've done when examining our categories is we've outlined 3 primary categories that we would like to enter into Category 3 program agreements with our municipalities for. The St. Clair Conservation Authority has never traditionally gone to our municipal partners for funding for these programs. They've always been funded through grants, donations, and fees. The challenge we've been hit hard with this last year is changes to a lot of the grants in particular. So we are either now outright excluded, or there's changes to them that greatly diminish the funding we can get. So in terms of our education program, for example, we used to get a significant amount of funding from one particular funder. They have now changed their business model And after 25 years, we no longer receive that funding. It's about $30,000 a year. For our conservation steward services programs, so it's our tree planting programs, we can get money to buy trees, but we can no longer get money to actually put the trees in the ground. So they've changed that categorization. And in terms of private land stewardship programs, the big change has been just outright excluding conservation authorities, period, from grants. So the province has changed. One grant we received for approximately 20 years. The province has now decreed not only can't the conservation authority receive this grant, but a municipality or non-government organization cannot work with the conservation authority to deliver programs. So we're not exactly sure who's going to deliver the programs, but anyways, that shows you, it gives you a bit of the challenges that we're facing. So in terms of the areas that we're asking for funding, I've broken out what exactly Southwest Middlesex gets for their dollars here. So in terms of our education programs, we have approximately 209 students from your area catchment schools. So we don't have any specific children are coming directly from the area, but we know the schools that the children attend, we get about 209 students per year. In terms of stewardship projects, we've done 6 projects in the last 5 years, total value about $13,000, just under $14,000. And those include 2 wetlands, 2 erosion control projects, and 2 fencing projects. So the bottom picture there gives you a good idea about what a fencing project looks at. You create a buffer zone from the creek and fencing your cattle so they can't get in the water. And the buffered area helps to absorb phosphorus from getting into water courses. And in terms of tree planting, we've done 3 projects, planted 18,780 trees, total value of about $67,000. And those rely on private landowners coming to us to work with the CA to get the trees in the ground. So in terms of what our ask, next slide, please. We've approached it somewhat differently. So we have done an apportionment. So if you look at the 2, the center column and the far right column, your apportion cost based on your levy would have been about $2,000 for school education. What we're requesting is the council would consider contributing $334 every year for the next 5 years. Private land stewardship, once again, portion cost was about $2,100. We're asking for a contribution of $500 to the municipality, and finally conservation services. Your contribution would have been under the apportionment $4,000, but we would be asking for a $500 contribution. The reason our numbers are so low, we're just looking for money to provide stability for our programs, for our staff to continue to do their work, and just gives us, it might not look like a lot of money, but in the aggregate, I have 17 municipalities I'm going to for these arrangements. So in the aggregate, we can get enough that'll help make sure staff are secure, but they can help deliver more programs. So, and with that, I've concluded my program, so I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions that you would like to direct to Ken? Seeing none, we want to thank you very much for the services that you provide. Council, we have 2 presentations in front of us. Staff have recommended the verbiage that is before you. The presentation and reports from St. Clair Regional Conservation Authority and Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority be received for information, and that the memorandum of understanding agreements be approved. This is for both watersheds. Is there a mover and a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Vink. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor McCollum. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Gentlemen, thank you. The consent agenda had the items as circulated among you. Are there any that council would like to pull out and discuss under new business? Seeing none, the chair will entertain the motion of consent for the items of information that's circulated. Is there a mover and seconder? Thank you. Councilor McCollum, seconder. Councilor Myers, discussion. All in favor? Carried. Moving on, council, number 6, there is no committee of adjustment. I've been advised of no public meetings. We're into number 8, staff reports. Kristen, how are you? Very well. Interesting survey. Could you walk council through it?
Yeah, sorry, I just have to open it up. Maybe. Not open. Unless you can.
We'll get just a brief pause for
Yeah.
technical difficulty.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to log in and open it through this.
Yeah, we'll just give Kristen a moment. With Alan's help, we will get this done.
Did it? Yeah, it's not. Oh, there it goes. I don't know why it gives me a hard time. Okay. Here it comes. Slowly. Maybe it's just because it's a bigger file.
It's a big file. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think you're making headway. All right.
Yeah.
If not, Kristen, if you can't
There
get
we
it,
go. There we go. Very good.
we have it downloaded.
Okay. So the 2024 budget survey was made available for 5 weeks, from August 24th to September 29th. And we received 93 responses over the period. All but one was from a resident, so likely somebody who owns land in the area, but doesn't live here. You can see the response volume over time. What this usually tells me is that no matter how long we extend it, usually most of the responses are as soon as we put it out. So we wouldn't have gotten that many more had we left it open for much longer. And as you can see from this pie graph here, most of our responses were from Ward 2. 69% of the respondents were from an urban setting, 31% from rural. 65% of the residents have lived within Southwest Middlesex for 10 or more years. So mostly urban long-term residents. And so the first question was, what services have you used in the last week? And as you can see, majority are garbage and recycling, roads, parks and green spaces, recreation and storm. That's typically where the focus of residents would be when looking towards the budget. When polling to see what residents feel their overall value for their dollar received is, the majority thought that they were receiving a fair value for what they were paying. So I kind of combined several questions along the way here. Overall, how satisfied are you with the delivery of all this services provided by Southwest? And a little bit indifferent, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. Some of the challenges voiced were a balance between providing a safe, comfortable, and enjoyable place to live, ensuring affordability, security, promoting the high school, watching for spending, lack of communication. I don't know that you need me to read all of the challenges and opportunities there, but when there's a number listed up to the side of a comment, that's the number of times I received that comment. Anything that wasn't within this budgeting purview or directed at a specific person, I just did not put in at all. So under safe and well-built communities, people thought, so you can see in this graphic on the bottom right, in the orange is how important people thought these services were, and in the blue is their level of satisfaction with these services. So you can see fire is fairly important and people are satisfied. Economic development, importance, and very satisfied. There were some concerns about the development process. Residents seem to want to make sure that we're prepared for growth and development, support needed commercial development, and affordable housing, economic development. So definitely looking for growth. Transportation, winter maintenance, listed as one of the most important, followed by road maintenance, traffic and pedestrian safety. There seems to be some residents looking for a formal crosswalk downtown, which I know is more of a county function, as is the Glendon Melbourne Road intersection, and some sidewalk issues listed as well. Healthy, livable communities, parks and playgrounds, recreation programs, sports and leisure programs. There's, I think probably aside from the storm challenges, this is where most of our comments were. People want more recreation programs, care and maintenance of the public spaces that we do have, kind of an evaluation to make sure that we're providing programs in all the areas that need it, and a good relationship with our minor sports programs. Lack of a gymnasium, things like that, but for the most part, generally more programming, more recreation. And partly in because of the timing of this, a lot of our comments were surrounding the flooding after the major storm that we had. So a good look at the stormwater management and flooding situation, which the council is aware we've addressed in the last couple of council meetings with some of the drains and information in the last year's budget that Mara's working on for some of the drainage as well. So specific to customer service, this is showing that still a lot of our customers are using phones and in person to contact us. We're trying to encourage more online through the website because it's typically a faster service response for them. But once we get more efficient with booking and the website, I think that'll increase. Oops, sorry. Some general thoughts related to customer service. I think the majority of respondents said they have positive, helpful interactions. They don't like the logo, fighting for more upper level government funding, improved communication, maybe updating the Facebook page and booking. And a lot of people thought that involving residents in decisions, like using this SurveyMonkey tool, was really a push in the right direction. It's a nice way to be able to collect large amounts of feedback from the residents. This one I did find interesting in that it was so very clear here. Most respondents felt that they would rather increase taxes to enhance or expand municipal services. So just something for council to keep in mind as we go into this budget season, that the large majority of these residents are looking for additional programs and services and seem to be willing to pay additional amounts for them. So that's all for the survey.
Thank you, Kristen. Council, any questions you'd like to ask Kristen through the chair? Yes, Councillor Choi, please go ahead.
Thank you. Not so much a question, but just a comment that I think I share the same words as the residents, that I think having these survey monkeys, I don't know if that's the right term, to get everyone's feedback is fantastic. And I love seeing what everyone's thinking.
Thank you. Councillor Vink.
Thank you, Mayor Al. I'd just like to mention that I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and 93 responses isn't that many out of all the ratepayers. So when it says 45% would like to have maybe their tax increase for more municipal services, I don't believe that's the general picture of the ratepayer. And I've lived here all my life, and the 93 responses are going to be people that are more interested in what's going on locally, not people that are busy with other things. And so I really don't feel that this is that accurate an overview.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Choi, please go ahead.
Thank you. Were there other, like, could somebody come into the office and fill this out by paper? Sorry, they could if they had come in and requested that. Follow up.
Yes, follow up. Go
Is
ahead.
that something that we could offer moving forward?
Yes, yes, we have iPads that we could offer at the front desk for anybody to fill in, something like that.
In terms of surveying, 93 responses isn't bad. We've had surveys where we've had less than that. It's very often just a quarter of 1%. So we did reasonably well on this one, and I found this extremely a good presentation, Kristen. It was very, very interesting, the responses, and I think they should guide council going forward to some degree. Any further questions? The recommendation before us is that council receives the report for information purposes. Is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor Choi, Councillor Myers. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Now, in staff reports, we have animal control contract renewal. I will hand the conversation over to Mike to introduce this. And Mike Henry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually am not the author of the report, but I can speak to it to a certain extent. So a year has passed since the Humane Society was awarded a one-year contract to provide animal control services to the municipality. And we're sitting here today to get council's feedback on what they would like to see with us moving forward, and what sort of term that should look like, et cetera, et cetera. So we're here for council's pleasure and a decision moving ahead in this regard.
Thank you, council. This is an important topic. Kristen, it does involve finances as well. And we fully realize that initially they had asked for a 4-year term, changed it to a 1-year term. The recommendation is for a 4-year term again. What is the thinking behind that? Could you enlighten council on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Initially, we requested a 5-year term because it was a joint RFP with the neighboring municipality. So the additional 4 years was just to keep us in line with that renewal for both of us in the next 4 years. And the Humane Society was kind enough to keep us on the same quotation as they had originally provided.
Okay. Thank you. That clarifies that very well. Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor Schuldice.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I think there's been a little bit of confusion with the former Animal Control Center. And I just wondered if Mr. Bedore could just address council for a brief second to say what their intentions are. I know we've had some conflict in information, and if we could just maybe hear directly.
You bet.
All right.
I think that's good. And Mr. Bedore, or is there a point of order here? Yeah.
Your worship, this isn't a formal point of order, but it would be recommendation of the clerk that procedurally we not engage in a public meeting without scheduling it.
Okay.
It is your choice.
I think that I think the nature of the chair will allow the conversation to go forward. I think it's just informative to council on what your objectives are and what your vision would certainly help council in this decision. Would one of you like to come forth and speak? It can be brief. It can be brief.
I didn't mean to put anybody on the spot here. If you don't want to.
No,
go ahead.
it's
It's
good.
not, I just.
But
thought
it's helpful, and your friendly faces here and good environment. So you relax and just perhaps give us a brief vision if you could.
Our intention is still to move forward with the animal control services for Southwest Middlesex. We've done nothing but continue and been asked from Stephanie Poirier, I guess the county planner. There's been a couple of roadblocks along the way, but I feel like we're still moving in the right direction. I feel like the last few things that we've been asked were kind of unnecessary. And I reached out to a couple of the counselors to see if they could side with us as far as just the steps that I don't believe needed to be done.
It is a process, and
No, I understand.
very often that process is outside of our governance, and we have to ask those questions and remediate those decisions.
But we've done huge gains in the last year. We've done a lot of updates, and I feel like we're ready. If council goes in our direction, I guess.
Okay.
Sorry, your worship, that portion with the report isn't actually up for debate at this point.
Okay.
Just
All right.
tread lightly here.
Okay.
Just want
will
to make
do.
sure all the legality.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate Mr. Henry advising me of that. We will tread carefully. Yep. Any further questions, council? Thank you very much. You make yourself comfortable in the gallery there, and council will continue to discuss this. Council, what's your feeling on this? Your input on this? Any questions you'd like to ask our administration? Yes, Councillor Vink.
Can we ask, thank you, Mayor, can we ask can we ask for another 1-year contract?
Absolutely. That's council's pleasure. If that's what council so desires, that's totally within the purview.
Yep. Just to remind you that that's a request, and the only condition I'd like to add to that at the negotiated rate, and as long as we can take advantage of the longer term rate, it would be part of that motion, I would think. Yeah.
Worship, I will add to that. So the negotiated rate is the rate, whether it be 1 year or 4 years at this point. So you would get this for a year. The only thing I can caution council on is if we come back to this point next year and we're at the same spot, there is a chance that their renewal may not be offered at the exact rate again. But for this term right now, for 1 year, I'm pretty confident in saying that's what it would be.
Okay. And I want to thank thank the gallery for the input that they've given there. There has been some confusion on that, and okay. Any further comment? There's a recommendation before you. I can call for a mover and a seconder. Yes.
Your worship, can I have you read the recommendation, please?
I can. That council authorized staff to enter into a contract with the London Humane Society for the provision of animal control services for the period December 1st, 2023 to November 30th, 2027.
Which, your worship, to my understanding, with Councillor Vinks was going to be the final part of that would be November 30th, 2024.
If council, if I can get a second.
Yeah, just that's what you
Yeah.
wanted though, Alan, correct? You wanted the recommendation in full now?
Well, through the mayor to the CAO, That was kind of the question, because I wasn't quite sure what was being tabled at this point in time. So now that
Yeah,
the mayor has
when we-
read 2023, I think we should consider 2027. And I think we should consider that right now. And if not, we'll go back to another term, unless the mayor wants to unread that.
Okay,
I think he wishes to unread it.
Okay, yeah.
yeah, we can, council, if there is support for this, we'll just make a small modification to the staff's recommendation. We can put that number in there. And if that recommendation comes forward, will you move that, Councillor Vink?
Yes, I will, Mayor Allen.
Okay, so that will be till December 24.
November 30th, 2024, your worship.
Yeah, November 30th, 2024. So again, the council authorized staff to enter a contract with London Humane Society for the provision of animal control services for the period of December 1st, 23 to November 30th, 24. Motion, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Myers has seconded that motion. Is there any discussion? Yes, Councillor Choi.
Thank you. My only concern would be that maybe a year possibly could not be enough time. And I would hate for it to be due in a year and then prices go up. My thoughts would be 2 years and then kind of see how it goes at that point, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Vink.
Yeah, my comment on that is that I'm willing to take that chance if we have a chance to have a local humane society. That's far better.
All right, so the motion will not be amended. But thank you, Councillor Choi. Your opinion is well understood. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Just for clarification, so if we go for the 1-year contract here, will the bidders be notified like in advance of the end of this 1 year? If they want to still submit a proposal at that time, they will receive something to know that the time period is coming.
Yeah, it would be my recommendation that you add that in as additional part of the amended recommendation that's there, simply because the tender already went out for this, and we did agree to that. We just modified the term. So the best course of action would be, in this case, under our procurement policy, would be to secure pricing quotations. So we wouldn't need to go to a full tender on this. We'd be able to go to seek pricing at that point. And if that's council's wishes, then council should add that to the recommendation.
Okay, that's fine. Alan, have you got that? Okay, I see it.
Yes, your worship.
Thank you. Okay. Council, is there any misunderstanding on the motion? Is everyone clear on it? The recommendation from staff has been amended to accommodate council's interests. Okay, yes.
Through your worship, can we just make absolutely sure with Councilor Vink that that amendment is correct? Because you're controlling officer right now.
Yes, Alan, yes, I'm in total agreement.
Thank you. The chair will call the question. All in favor of the motion as amended, recommendation as amended? All opposed? Carried. Okay, be back in a year. Council, no notice. I have not been advised, council, of any notices of motion. I'll just pause for a minute, look at the horseshoe. Correspondence and petition, there's none. Unfinished business, there is none. New business, I'll look to my left. I don't see any. County council and conference updates. They have been circulated by county council. The message is coming out. No other councilor has any reports. Seeing none, I'll move on to announcements. Council, are there any announcements you wish to make in regard to your wards or the municipality in general? Seeing none, I would just like to tilt our hats to the acting crew. The facility in Appin, our Eckford Community Center, has a new hot water on demand system, tankless system. And there's new carpet on the stage. The trim is new, and there's a very attractive stairway coming for the south end of that stage. And that is all financed by the acting company that rent that facility. They invest a significant amount of money in that facility to maintain it. And we're very pleased to have them as a preferred tenant. And I think their work should not go unnoticed. We're looking at, they have contributed over a period of time, hundreds of thousands of dollars to that facility. Before you, council, are the bylaws, mostly drainage. We have formally discussed these through the drainage process. Recommendation that bylaw 2023-58, 59, 60, 61 be given third and final reading. Is there a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Don McCollum, and a seconder for that. Councillor Haggett. All in favor? Carried. And continuing on, that bylaw 2023-75, 76, and 77 be read and adopted. Alan, would you like to read that bylaw?
Okay, so your worship, the bylaws being reviewed here is a repeal of bylaw 15, year 2013, 2024, which was requested by resolution in the last meeting. The next bylaw is the bearish tile loan, which is a formal document that we need to endorse for funding, I believe. Thank you. And 77 is our confirmatory bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that, Alan. Council, the recommendation has been made by staff and explained by Alan. Is there a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Choi, and a seconder for that. Councillor McGill, thank you, Mark. Discussion, questions to Alan? All in favor? Carried. Council, we're at a point where we will go into closed session. As per section 2392 of the Municipal Act, you consider the following: minutes, items protected under 2392 of the Municipal Act, item protected under 239/2 C, B, and K. Is there a mover and a seconder? Councilor McCollum, a seconder for that. Councilor McGill, questions? All in favor? Carried.